Hello there, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. Tonight, we're going to do part two of a little series I started before on Black Sabbath clones, bands that sound an awful lot like Black Sabbath. They took that influence and kind of just stuck to that formula very, very closely. Sabbath, of course, was a hugely influential band on a lot of acts throughout multiple decades at this point. Some bands just stayed a little closer to the formula than others. I've previously did a video where we talked about 3 bands that stayed very close to the Black Sabbath template, and tonight we're going to check out 3 additional bands that follow along that same path. We'll play a few clips, discuss a few band bios, and let you see what you think of these. Without further ado, let's get on to our first band. They are out of California, relatively new band that are still quite active, is Beastmaker. Beastmaker is probably best known as some of the guys from the band Haunt. Haunt have gained a reasonable amount of popularity over the past few years. I think they're best known though for just spewing out a really ridiculous number of releases in a very short time frame. And hey, in this day and age, that is certainly one way to get noticed. They've kind of done the same thing with Beastmaker. If you're familiar with the band's catalog, they released, I think, 8 EPs in 2018 alone. That's a lot of EPs for 1 year. But, again, in this digital age where you can record a few songs, get them cleaned up, roll them out there for the public, and then start the process over. It's a way to kind of help, get some visibility, generate a little hype about your band. And whichever way they're handling their releases, Beastmaster are very much, or sorry, Beastmaker. Always want to say Beastmaster, but it's Beastmaker. They are very much operating in that classic doom metal style. This is their first full-length album. No, sorry, second full-length album from 2017 called Inside the Skull. And we're going to check out a clip of the lead-off track, which is called Evil One. So here we go with a little Beastmaker. So yeah, there is some Beastmaker with Evil One off the 2017 album Inside the Skull. There's obviously a good dose of Black Sabbath in there. Methinks I detect just a hint of 80s era Pentagram as well, especially some of the big heavy honking riffs there. They kind of reek of Victor Griffith just a little bit, and I'm perfectly okay with that because Pentagram is great and Victor's one of the best to ever play that style. If you're interested in checking out some Beastmaker and you're not sure where to start, in 2023, some of those EPs that they put out in 2018 are supposed to be getting a reissue and kind of repackaged. It looks like they're going to do some volumes where they take 2, maybe 3 of those and put them together onto a single full-length disc. So if you didn't get all the EPs when they came out and you don't want to track them down now, that should be a pretty good way to check out the band. I don't have all the details of them on hand. I've gotten to hear a few of the collections on some promo releases. Some of them definitely sound a bit stronger than others. But, they were all released around the same time, all very much in the same style. So if that's your thing, absolutely you can check out some more Beastmaker reissues, hopefully before 2023 is over. All right, our second band for the evening is one that I mentioned in a video not too long ago, where I went back and covered some releases from 2022 that didn't get their due at the time when I did my best of 2022 titles. There's always some things you don't hear until a little bit later, or you get at the very last minute. And this was one that had been on my radar in 2022, but I didn't actually get it ordered until early 2023. And once I got it, I've spun the crap out of it. It's probably gotten played more than any other album I've bought in the past year. It's another California band. Californians know how to do Sabbath. And this band is called Early Moods. This is their self-titled album. It's on Writing Easy Records from last year. They'd done an EP previously that was also pretty good. But this album is absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to go into tons of detail since I discussed it a lot in the 2022 update video. But what I didn't do in that video was play any clips. A lot of folks said this sounded very interesting or that they'd checked out a little bit, left comments saying that, yeah, wow, that sounds amazing. And so tonight, I want to take the time and play a little clip of it for those of you who haven't yet checked out Early Moods. This is a bit of the lead-off track called Return to Salem's Gate. All right, there is a bit of Return to Salem Gate by Early Moods. Great opening. That first riff is so Sabbath. How much more Sabbath could it be? The answer is none. None more Sabbath. But after they do that, for a few measures, all of a sudden they increase the tempo. They have that little drum roll, and then they start moving at a faster, more aggressive pace. It's a very Witchfinder General kind of moment. Very much reminds me of things that Witchfinder General would do on their albums. And that's kind of what Early Moods is doing. They've got the Sabbath vibe, but they clearly know some of the other classics as well. And they're putting them together just in a perfect way. This is a fantastic album, start to finish. Every track is a banger on it for sure. If you like this style of Doom, by all means, you need to go order this from either Bandcamp or directly from Writing Easy. They tend to have CD sales every few months, so you can pick it up. They ship pretty fast. There's no reason not to get the Early Moods album. All right, now in the first Black Sabbath clone video, I did, two more recent bands and one kind of throwback band. I want to follow that same formula tonight. We've talked about two bands that are sort of still up and coming, very active younger groups. Excuse me there. So for band number 3, we're going to go way back in the time machine and look at somebody that was looking to ride the Black Sabbath coattails just a little bit before it was trendy to do so. Our third entry for the evening is a band from Scotland called Iron Claw. Iron Claw started around 1969. Some of the guys were already active, sort of on the music scene in Scotland, working with different musicians and stuff. Got very sort of, influenced, turned on to heavier music by a Led Zeppelin performance. Put a band together, started working on their thing. But one of the sort of, big eureka moments for the band that's outlined in the liner notes on this CD pressing is when they saw Black Sabbath play in Scotland. I believe, as they say, it's in Dumfries, in November of 1969. And of course, those of you who know your Sabbath calendars very well Well, no, this is then a few months before the release of the debut Black Sabbath album on February 13th, which was a Friday, of course, in 1970. So, yeah, the band mentioned in here, they saw them play this particular show in November of 1969, and almost overnight, they admittedly kind of became a Black Sabbath tribute band. I think in the liner notes, they flat out say, we may have been the first Black Sabbath tribute band because we pretty much incorporated the entire first album into our playset during early and mid 1970. The stuff on here, a lot of it's all just demos and stuff. They never got a chance to release their own album back in the day. A lot of the material, at least the first chunk of the disc, is stuff that they recorded starting in mid 1970 into late 1970. They had entered a local Battle of the Bands contest, won and got free studio recording time. So they went in and started cutting some demo tracks. According to the liner notes, later in 70 or maybe in 71, they had managed to get a copy of some of their recordings into the hands of somebody in the Black Sabbath camp. They don't say whether it's a band member or just some of the various folks working with the band. And I guess they were kind of hoping to get their attention, maybe get picked up as well, play support tours, something like that. And it actually kind of backfired because they detail in the liner notes that they ended up getting a sort of cease and desist letter from the band's management, who apparently weren't too keen on the fact that there was this other band in Scotland trying to sound like Black Sabbath. And so they basically, threw a bunch of legal stuff at the bands, like, hey, knock it off, or, we're going to, come after you guys. It's very funny to think about, in this day and age. Can you imagine if that legal, concept actually was a thing and stuck, and bands could sue one another out of existence for sounding too much like other bands? It's like, sorry, Quorthon, Bathory sounds too much like Venom. The Venom legal team says, nix that, and there's no Bathory. Halloween sues every power metal band from Europe the past 30 years. How many lawsuits does Judas Priest and Iron Maiden have to file in the early 1980s? I don't know. It's kind of insane, but that's how the story goes according to the documents in Iron Claw. The liner notes are pretty interesting. They're very detailed. I'd be willing to bet that the person who wrote a lot of them was keeping diaries, because they have things nailed down to the exact date, not just sometime in 1970. They can say it's like November 16th, 1970 at this time. So I'll bet they had diaries that they were able to go back and reference to have such meticulous notes in here. It's an interesting read. Like a lot of bands from this era who went through, these kind of, heavy vibes, they tried out other musical styles as well. Not every song on here is crushingly heavy, but some of them are quite good. And let's stop rambling for a minute and check out a bit of a track on here that's called Claustrophobia. Iron Claw? Claustrophobia? You see what they did there. Let's check it out. you go with Iron Claw, really slagging one out there. Very, very heavy riff. This is being recorded in like mid 1970. I think the dates they have for these demos are like between June and December of that year. So yeah, already getting a pretty crushingly heavy sound. And they get it on some other tracks on here too. Skull Crusher is another one that's got a real heavy riff to it. The demos, as might be expected, a little bit raw, a little underproduced, but it's okay. It kind of adds to the charm of them in a way. As far as my discovery of Ironclaw goes, I must give a shout out to longtime acquaintance, online buddy, Bigfoot Kit. He's one of the sort of mythical posters over on the Colosseum website. Kit ran the new and improved Live and Otherwise blog back in the earlier 2000s. This was when the Blogspot era was a big deal. For those of you who don't remember it or weren't in touch with it or are too young for it, Blogspot, basically online blogs, there was a lot of years there where people would use those to post tons of stuff about bands, including download links to lots of albums, singles, demos, live recordings, etc., etc. Some of these blogs were very detailed, very informative. Some of them were little more than a clearinghouse for, stuff people had nabbed off of Napster or other places. Kit's new and improved Live and Otherwise blog was arguably the best one out there. If you wanted obscure, hard, and heavy music from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, even maybe back into the 60s, Kit always put a lot of work into it, had very nice bios written up for every band. It wasn't just about trying to spew out copies and digital files of every recording he could get. He wanted to put together a nice story for each of the releases, get a copy with good sound quality, and just give people a chance to check out a lot of this very obscure underground stuff that you were not going to find. It wasn't likely to ever get a reissue, stuff like that. So it was a very informative blog site. He still posts over on the Colosseum from time to time. Super nice guy. He and I have sent some stuff back and forth a lot over the years. One of the nicest fellows I've ever gotten to know in music circles on the internet. And he turned me on to Ironclaw a long time ago, and it is a great recording. This has been pressed a few different times, so if the clip that I played sounds interesting to you, you can track down a copy without too much difficulty, I suspect. Just be advised again, sound quality can be a little rough, and not all the material on here is going to be that poundingly heavy, as you can even hear in the vocals on the Claustrophobia track I just played. There's definitely elements of that very late 60s and very early 70s, hard rock bluesy vibe. There's some Deep Purple, early Deep Purple worked in there for sure. And these are bands coming out of the psychedelic era and moving more into, the slightly heavier vein, but there's still a lot of blues and there's still a lot of, drugs and stuff all mixed into that, different sonic soundscapes that they're playing around with. But pretty cool collection, very interesting read through the liner notes. Ironclaw, one of those that should not be overlooked by folks wanting to explore the impact Black Sabbath had really right out of the gate before the first Sabbath album even hit record stops. You already had bands realizing that Sabbath was something special and that they were going to change their sound and sort of follow suit. That's our 3 bands for the night. We have done it. So now let me shut up and instead let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of this batch? Any of these bands impress you right off, or these bands that you're already into? Do you know more about the Ironclaw story? I noticed on Discogs there's a few other things that have been released with the band's name on it. I don't know if they're just other sort of different collection versions of these tracks. Maybe a few other tracks here and there were dug up later on. By all means, if you've got more information, please share it in the comments so that other people can learn from you, check out stuff, and add to their musical knowledge. What do you think of the Black Sabbath clones overall? Are there other ones that I should have mentioned? I've gone through 6. Some of you are probably yelling at your computer, why haven't you mentioned such and such band? Well, hey, you can mention them in the comments down below so that other people can check them out. I may never have heard of the band you want featured, so Give me a name, point me in the right direction. I can learn from y'all and check out more cool music too. That's what we're all here to do. With that, let's bring this video to a close. It's getting late. Time for me to crash. So until next time, everybody stay safe. And as always, keep banging your head.